Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast. I'm John Borton here with Tom Crawford. Our man in East Lansing brings you all things Michigan from that particular, at times, hostile outpost. Tom, great to have you back with us.
It can be hostile, even in the sultry hot days of mid-June. People still talking college football up here. I'm talking college football. I'm talking college basketball and everything else. But it's great to be on with you, John. No off days on the Wolverine.com, no off weeks because there's just too much content to go over, right?
There's no question about it. And we're always talking Michigan football, and we are talking Michigan football most certainly on this day because there are just some things that as we draw to the close of one of our busier times of the year, even though the events aren't going on, but football talk is always going on. We're finishing up the football preview. I know that's near and dear to your heart. And it's something that all the folks on the Fort and Beyond, our premium message board, are looking forward to. I love the time of year when people from coast to coast are saying, oh, it arrived in Santa Barbara, California, or in Miami, Florida, wherever it might be. So we've talked to a lot of people. We've talked to players on this Michigan team. We've talked to their relatives, we've talked to their friends, we've talked to some coaches, and we've talked to some very savvy observers about Michigan. And that's what I want to focus in on a couple of things. I'll start with a rather maybe controversial topic, and one that I know that we have discussed before. But I'm just going to lay something out to you, and then toss it to you in the spirit of good jousting with regard to a subject that is going to be on the lips of most Michigan fans between now and through camp and into the season. So I'll just say it right this way. Cade McNamara, as a quarterback, his first full year as a quarterback, he gets Michigan into position to do some great things against Ohio State. The Wolverines beat Ohio State. They win the Big Ten. They make the college football playoff for the first time ever, not with a 2 or 3 year starter at quarterback, but with a first year starter. I think Cade McNamara, for all of J.J. McCarthy's tremendous potential, I think Cade McNamara is going to be your starter in the opener. I think he will be starting when Michigan plays at Iowa, and I think he will be starting when the Wolverines play down at Columbus. Convince me I'm wrong.
Well, you might be right. And to be honest with you, and this might sound, evasive. I mean, it's not so much who starts. And everybody says, oh, you don't want to do the Stanley Jackson, Joe Germain thing from Ohio State in '96, or the two quarterback system, Brady, Drew Henson, that didn't work, whatever. So what do you do? So when you say start, does that mean that J.J. McCarthy and all of his skill set and what he does to threaten the defense is going to get basically a situational 6 to 8, maybe 10 snaps out of the, let's say, 70 snaps in the game on a good day? I mean, is that you got to paint the whole picture for me, John, besides just tagging it as your starter? I get all that. I could almost go along with that. I want more participation out of that young man, number 9.
Yeah, well, I don't think you get 6 to 8 snaps. I think you got more than that most of the time last year. I think that you expand the package for J.J. McCarthy.
Well, define that. Define that. Let's define. I don't mean to get caught up in just raw numbers, but when you're dealing with, and I know situations will call for different things, but let's say 70 offensive snaps. How do you break down percentage-wise who gets what to make it not just equitable and fair or anything? I mean to put yourself in the best position to beat good teams, not the cupcakes coming out of the chute. That's easy. Okay, that's not even an issue. I'm talking about
Mhm.
at Iowa. I'm talking about Penn State at home. I'm talking about Michigan State or at home. Yeah, Michigan State's at home and going to Columbus. There's two tough road games at Iowa City, at Ohio State. What puts you in the best position to win those games in terms of the quarterback participation?
All right, let's go there because I think it's completely situational as to opponent and as to what's happening in the game. When you're playing against, for instance, you've got this non-conference schedule that has been much decried by Tom Crawford, and I
As
get why.
justly so.
Because you want them to be playing a little bit tougher competition to be more ready down the road. I'm
Exactly.
looking at it as okay, you've got those wins in the book, you have more time for more people to do more things early. And when I look at okay, they're playing Hawaii and they go into the second half and they're up 28-3. I don't think it has to get to 40-3 before you let other guys take over. I think you know you're going to win that game. You maybe let JJ McCarthy have the entire second half, even though he's appeared in the first half. You gear it that way. When you get to the tougher games like in Iowa, I just think you build on what you were doing last year. You saw JJ McCarthy being able to come into the game, use his legs, do the run pass option more and more effectively than a Cade McNamara could. You use his arm as a threat, both as a decoy at times. I mean, if the play action with J.J. McCarthy is probably a better sell at times than with Cade McNamara. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and I just want to see him certainly be very involved. But no, I don't think it has to be 6 to 8 snaps or just a couple of series in the game. I think they did a pretty good job in his first year of play of getting him involved. I just think it needs to be expanded. And again, as you are playing some of these games where I, I think there's a form of conservatism when you think, oh well, maybe Hawaii is going to come back on us, or Colorado State, which didn't have a good year last year. We'll see how those games go. But if you're in control halfway through, then I think you can be a little bit more generous in terms of who you put on the field.
Which would be a change from last year's, because when you look at the play charts and all that, because you distract. Let me give you an example: the Western Michigan game when JJ got in the game. I mean, it was not the start of the third quarter, or I mean, and I know it was his first game, and that touchdown pass to Baldwin was on a broken plate. Let's be real. I mean, they're not putting him in a situation where he has to execute, where he can enhance and develop his skill set in game time situations when the game is still on the line. We're not, like you said, 40-3. Because what Harbaugh does, he subs late. Let's be real. And I'm talking about on the defensive side of the ball. When you look in some of these blowouts, he brings in guys late. He might filter some in, but they're coming late. Then they're all there. 6 minute mark on down. When you're up 5 touchdowns. But yeah, so that would be a definite upgrade. And I think before our next podcast, I'm going to seriously go through the number of snaps that JJ had. The Georgia game was when the team got blown out, and you might as well throw this guy in because the other guy is getting his ass buried in the sand. Let's just go with JJ. I mean, I just take that away. I really want to go for myself to see exactly how much participation JJ got.
Yeah, well, and I as I have attempted to explain, I have no problem with JJ seeing time because you are one snap away, one play away from him being your every snap quarterback. And I think beyond that, that's kind of the uh, traditional saying, but he's more than a backup quarterback. There's no question about that.
Well,
We saw that last year. They're getting him involved. He's like 1A rather than B.
well,
And the more you
yeah.
can the more you can have him completely ready if he was to be the starter in Columbus, then make sure that he's on the field at Iowa enough so that not only he can help you, but that he is ready for that kind of a crowd and that kind of situation.
Well, so you're presenting JJ McCarthy to us in a premise of we need to prepare him in a backup role so he's ready. So it's a quote unquote reserve mentality that you're describing JJ McCarthy. And I get in these discussions with our mutual friend, my media colleague Rico Beard on Press Pass All Stars on Fox 47 in Lansing. He's a Michigan State fan media. We know that from 97.1 with Mike Bellini. But you know, who does he want as a Michigan quarterback? Cade McNamara. All Michigan State people want Cade McNamara. Why? They feel less threatened by Cade McNamara, is my interpretation. That's not that that's the decision maker, but they always spew out the comeback. Oh, well, he fumbles the ball. He costs you the game in East Lansing, in East Lansing in the game and the Haskins handoff. He costs you the game. Doesn't talk about that laser touchdown pass in the north end zone that he threw to Andrew Anthony Jr. Doesn't talk about that pass or some of the other good stuff he does and all the stuff he did throughout the entire season. So I'm just all about, if we're in this negotiation, John, of what do we do with this two quarterback system, the Brady Drew Henson situation, or whatever you want to call it. Are we going to come to the middle? I'm not asking, necessarily that he starts. I just want more than the few snaps, and I want relevant participation where the game is on the line, where he creates the margin, the lead, if you will. JJ McCarthy, maybe even start him a couple of games. I don't know if that's possible, but he's got too much skill set to sit on the bench more than just 8 or 10 plays.
Yep, and I agree. I want an expanded package for him. I want him to be fully ready to take over as the quarterback on an every down basis if that is needed. I think there are different ways that quarterbacks win games, though. I mean, I get the fact that people see J.J. McCarthy and see his athleticism and see his arm and think, wow, this guy is going to be just a superstar. And I tend to think that he will be down the road. But I also know that people thought the same thing about Joe Milton against Minnesota in an opening game in 2020 because he looked like a world beater. He can throw it forever, and he's got good athleticism. I'm not making the comparison to those two guys, but I think we can fall in love with arm strength and with athleticism, and yet ignore or overlook the ways that some quarterbacks win games, and that's by knowing when to throw it in the second row or knowing how to not throw it to the other team, to be able to instantly we talk about edge rushers and the challenge that they present. There's two ways to at least two ways to beat edge rushers. One is to peel away from them and create something like a JJ McCarthy can. The other way is to be savvy enough to be able to pick up the hot route and get rid of the ball and make people pay for bringing the heat, the extra heat that you might on a blitz, and those situations. So I just think that there's a lot more to Cade McNamara than he has been given credit for in some areas. I go right back to my talks with Doug Karsh, who's down on the field for every game and seeing and hearing what he has to say about some of those plays, those bang bang plays, decision making wise, that Cade McNamara had to make.
I'm not denying that at all, and I know the hot route thing, and I also know his trajectory sometimes has the ball going in the back of his offensive line's helmets. I mean, he gets the ball batted down. Uh, I just in the reason, and I'm getting ahead of myself here because keep in mind that I'm not noting here that J.J. McCarthy is coming off a shoulder situation, if you will. He's got a situation he's got to work out with his shoulder. Okay, it was a non-surgical procedure, so
Right.
there's some diciness of that, and and no diciness of that. I mean, there's it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because he's not 100% right now, and so I might be chasing after something that is not a workable deal anyway if this injury does linger, and then it becomes a non-discussion issue. But I want to see that young man when he's healthy have an opportunity to move this offense because when I look at the big time programs in college football, I see quarterbacks that are there's some attributes that I yearn that the Michigan quarterback has, and JJ McCarthy fits a lot of those attributes.
I understand, and I'll tell you what, I certainly appreciate J.J. McCarthy for many reasons. One, that through all this, uh, he's gotten all this hype, and probably some people say, well, why don't you just jump in the portal and go somewhere else? No desire to do that at all. He's just said, look, I'm here. I love Michigan. I'm dug in. I'm going to be here. And I want to, and I certainly recognize his physical talents. I just think that Michigan is in a good situation the way it was last year, if they can take that same situation and build on it for both of these guys. So, and the other thing is, had he not had shoulder issues and had he gone through spring ball, that being JJ McCarthy, I might be in much more of a position to
Exactly.
say, I don't know that, I'm not making any bold predictions about who starts at Iowa and that sort of thing. So we'll watch this thing play out as we're talking about Iowa and the games you mentioned. I like your mention the fact that Michigan has really only two what I would consider very tough road games, Iowa and Ohio State, and that puts so much on that first one.
It does.
I honestly believe my prediction. I shouldn't I shouldn't mention this, but for the magazine was the strong possibility of Michigan being able to go into Columbus undefeated, and if they do that, there is an outside possibility that they could come away from that game not winning and still make the college football playoff. Thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah. This is where I got twisted up in this non-conference slate because I think the going to Iowa City, there's so much pressure on that game because you don't have a mulligan there hanging out there for you. If you have a goof up in the regular season against a good team on the road like the Iowa Hawkeyes, that would be an acceptable loss with credibility in terms if you beat a decent actually play a Power Five team and your 3 game non-conference slate, all at home, mind you, that are pretty weak teams. I mean, Hawaii and UConn. Let's face it, John. These are two of the weakest team in the group of 5 teams. I mean, that's just reality. And those are 2 of your 3 home games right before you go into Iowa. And I just don't think that puts you in position to really expose yourself to what you need to work on in a tough game in Iowa City. I'm being redundant when I say that. But yeah, you're right. So if they got to beat Iowa, if they lose to Iowa after,
They have to
they
run the
got to
table.
run the table. They got no money in the till to get entrance into the nightclub there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And my thing, my look at that same situation is if they're playing say a Notre Dame early, and these days they lose that game narrowly, or by 10 points or so, and then they win the rest until they get to Columbus, losing a shootout. 2 losses, you're not going to make it. 1 loss in a close shootout game at Columbus, you might slip into that 4 spot in the college football playoff.
Yeah,
So
but so you're under the premise you're just saying you're trying to build this thing that that Michigan can get into the CFP with losing to Ohio State. That's how you're structuring your
I just
premise.
think, well, I just think the way everything's set up, you can't afford an early loss these days in college football unless you have that early loss and then you run the table. I
If
mean,
you
that's
beat Notre Dame, like for example, 2018, Michigan opened with a loss to Notre Dame, right? And then they
mhm,
ran the table all the way to Columbus. All they had to do was beat Ohio State, and they were favored, and they got blown out. Okay, we know
mhm,
how that nightmare went. Okay,
right,
so but it
right.
was all
So,
set up because
so
their
you take
loss. I remember that. I remember all all the experts were talking about. Yeah, but that's a credible loss to Notre Dame because Notre Dame was good.
Yep. But you take that same year and you play somebody that is not Notre Dame on the road, and you win that game. Then you get to the end, and you don't get blown out by Ohio State, but you lose 42-40 or 42-41. It's a different deal. So I think they're in a position to be able to win every game they play up until Columbus. And I'm not saying they can't win down there, but you'd sure rather be going into that one with no losses than with one. And
And these
certainly,
home games are not cupcakes either. Let's just don't check off Penn State and Michigan State home games in October as W's because that's the furthest thing from the truth.
that's true. And they've certainly proven the ability to not get the job done against Michigan State, home and away. They can. They've proven under Harbaugh that they can win at Michigan State, but they've also proven that being home is no guarantee whatsoever. So all of this is great summer talk. We're going to move on and talk a little bit. I know you wanted to mention one Mr. Jordan Poole, switching away from football for just a minute, and then we'll go back there. But your thoughts about how he continues to play extremely well in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch Jordan navigate the playoff in the finals because you're playing against the Boston Celtics, one of the great defensive teams. And last night, I mean, and he's had a little bit of an up and down with his game. Sometimes he hasn't gotten his shots, but 14 minutes of play last night and 3 critical threes, including one at the end of the quarter, one of the quarters, maybe the third quarter again. I'm not sure which quarter it was or half, whatever. That 14 minutes and 14 points. I mean, and this guy is amazing. He was interviewed on NBA TV after the game and well spoken. I mean, maturity. I mean, his 23rd birthday, John, is Sunday, which ironically they could they could win Game 7 on his birthday. 23 years old, Jordan Poole is, and what he's in the finals. And I mean, Isaiah Thomas was humming the victors, kind of doing the Michigan, paying homage to him, and he was smiling. I'm just happy. You know me in the NBA, and you know me in the NFL, John.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
all about Michigan players. I love to see him do good, and he's there with the Splash Brothers, and he's one win away from an NBA ring, and I'm so happy for that young man.
Yep, that's good stuff, no doubt. And it's about continuing to bring in the Jordan Pooles and the Aiden Hutchinsons and the players that are difference makers. You switching back just on our final topic to football. I know you have some concerns about procuring players in the future at a level that will allow you to compete against the best of the best. Is that an accurate evaluation of your stance here?
Yeah, yeah. The last thing I want to be accused of is being a recruit, Nick. Okay, let me go on. Let me go and make that declaration right now, John.
Right,
But
right.
I'm aware. I'm aware of some things, some trends that are going on right now. And it's just not the fact Michigan's only got 620 or 2023 recruits so far. That's not so unusual. You have Northwestern in the top 10. Why? Because they got all these commitments. Northwestern's in the top 10. Notre Dame's number one. But I am concerned about a couple of programs that are really getting good players that are going to. Well, Ohio State always gets good players, and Ryan Day, he is not going to go away as a juggernaut. They're going to get great players. I really, much as he's an Ohio State guy. I'm more and more impressed by him whenever I hear him talk, and I'll just leave that at that and what he does, how he does his job, and I'll just leave it at that. But there's another guy up here, Mel Tucker, that I'm concerned about. He is kicking ass recruiting, and he loves to recruit. He is taking recruiting at Michigan State and the bland 3-star character kids, chip on the shoulder kids, into some studs up here. And so, they're top 10, top 15 for Michigan State. That's quite a bit. He's doing it in creative ways. He's bringing out Lamborghinis and putting them on Spartan Stadium Field and having the guys sit in cars for picture opportunities. Not that you're going to get this as an NIL gift, but it's just doing fun stuff. He seems like a fun guy, and Michigan State is getting athletes on defense that concerns me. And I'm fearing that Michigan State's talent level will go up, and we know what dealing with Michigan State is from a Michigan perspective. When their talent is average, how difficult will it be when they're really got talent? And that concerns me when you got Ohio State, and also you got Marcus Freeman down there at Notre Dame. And I'm not just talking about the CJ Carr thing, but watch out for Notre Dame because you're in their same recruiting footprint with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, you have to yourself continue to procure the kind of talent that is going to uh, put you in position to beat all of those teams. And I think Michigan will continue to do that. I love. I think that uh, their offensive line recruiting, the fact that they were able to pick up Olu Oluwatimi in the offseason is going to prove monumental for that offensive line. You have long longed for an upgraded old style Michigan rushing attack. They
Mm-hmm.
got back to that a little bit last year. I think they're going to have more of it this year. So yeah, it doesn't stop. I get your concern in these other areas. Certainly, it's Michigan State uh, is an interesting one to me because they absolutely did not compete against Ohio State. Just flat out
No,
didn't.
hey, listen. I hear you totally. I'm just talking about Michigan versus Michigan State. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they've beaten them
Yep.
2 times. I mean, he's 2-0 against Harbaugh. Okay,
Yep.
and the other thing is this D line coach, Marco Coleman. I think they got a good one. And Mike Elson, I got supreme respect for what he did at Notre Dame. I hope that is a good. I hope that works out great at Michigan as a D line coach, not just from schematic, but getting guys that want to play for him. I'm hoping that works out because there's some pretty steep competition. Larry Johnson down there at Ohio State, and I think Marco Coleman is going to be a really good one at Michigan State. I mean, these position coaches that have the slash, coordinator kind of deal to them. There's some good talented coaches, and Michigan's in a lot of competition. That Big Ten East is brutal.
No
And
doubt.
it was so much fun to go down, to Miami, and even though they lost, that they were in the CFP. I'm spoiled now. I want it to happen again, and I'm getting greedy. I want it to happen next year, and so that's why I'm paranoid about some of these other thorns in our.
Well, there you go. And I think a key to getting there is a dominant offensive line. And you were mentioning guys that recruit and also are a coordinator, Sharon Moore, big key there. I'll tell you what a job in year one. So, hey, great discussion today. I appreciate it. We will continue this throughout the summer and into the fall. Tom Crawford, great to have you with us, and let's do this again soon.
Always a pleasure, JB. Until next time on the Wolverine Podcast.